Now, three, two, one. Hey, what's everybody? What's going on? Pete Caliendo here. Baseball Outside the Box, the show that loves the interview baseball's greatest coaching minds that love the challenge, the status quo. I'm your host, and we are ready to rock and roll. Thank you for joining us. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and also Zoom. And we will, in case you missed this, it will be on YouTube at Peter Caliendo. Or in case you have to go and you want to check it out, just go to Peter Caliendo on YouTube. Today, we are back with the vision game. Of course, why? It's the number one important thing. And I'm bringing this show specifically is dedicated to Mr. Bill Harrison, the dad of Ryan Harrison, who's on as our guest today. Bill Harrison, the godfather. I call him the godfather of vision training. Rest in peace. What a super individual. Just he did so much for me. I want to dedicate the show to him. And, of course, Ryan, he was an intern as soon as he was born. So he learned from right away, and he's been in this a long time. Most of you know these guys already. They've got, we're talking about 49-year history of training athletes at all sports, at the major league level, minor league level, pro, college, you name it. They've been on MLB Network. I think they're the best in the business. And I don't want to waste any time. You guys know who they are. We'll send you the show notes on them also. So right away, let's welcome my good friend and also ISG baseball good friend, because he travels around the world for us, went to Cuba just recently to help the Cubans there on vision training, Ryan Harrison. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Pete. Thanks for having me again. And this time on video, so everyone gets to look at my shiny forehead right here,
And one thing I always want to say, and I want to say to you, your dad was always great to me, as you have also. And I never forget your dad and never will. And God bless him, man. He was the guy that, changed everything when it came to sports vision.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. It's hard to believe it's been a little over a year now. Unfortunately, it's longer than that from his battle. But, I still have so much stuff to go through because he had written so much content that hopefully I can get this all done and put it out there for people, because he was obviously as a son, you don't realize it too much until later in life, but some of the stuff he was doing in the early 70s and doing with these teams, it's amazing how much in the forefront they were, that even today there's some research that's coming out that's saying good stuff about the things that happened, but it wasn't out there in the past. So, now the research is starting to catch up to things they've been doing since the 1970s, which is pretty amazing.
Hey, we're on with Ryan Harrison. Slow the Game Down. Go to slowthegamedown.com. Check it out. He's got so much great stuff. I want to go back when you talk about your dad, because of what, when he first started and created a lot of things that he was working on. We're talking about like 1971 with the Royals Academy. And now to now, I know a lot's changed, but what's the major things that have changed from that time to now?
Well, honestly, Peter, the things that have changed is technology and the access to the information. That's what's really changed. A lot of people always ask me year to year, what do you got new? What do you got new? And the reality is the eyes are the same. They haven't changed. The brain hasn't changed. There's still, there's some adaptability. There's new tools, new technology that's made it a little bit easier to evaluate some things. But a lot of the concepts and a lot of the techniques and a lot of the tactics are really have been pretty sound over those 50 years, which is pretty cool to be doing it 50 years ago. And still, sometimes I think am I repeating something? And everyone goes, I've never heard that before. And I'm like, well, we've been doing this for 50 years,
Absolutely. And I know I've heard your show many times. You've had great guests on your show also. And, I know you've said several times, because, you wish that people sometimes, would listen, I guess, because you do say those things. And then, later on they admit it. Oh man, I should have done that. I think we all think I wish we would have known this when we were playing. And most of us did. It was just scary to us, and we didn't want to really, try it.
Yeah. I mean, I hear that all the time, and I laugh too, because, it was around. It just may not have been as out there as much as people knew, or players weren't ready for it at the time because they were searching so many other avenues, whether it was strength and, putting the work in their swing and then coming back and going, God, if I knew this was so important, I might've spent more time on it. And I've had a lot of players over the years that say that. It's like, I listened to you, but I didn't really put as much emphasis that I probably should have to help me get to that next level. And, vision is not necessarily sexy. It's not, you're not sweating a lot when you're doing things. And at the same time, it's a little bit scary for coaches because it's like they think it's about you either see or you don't see. And there's so many avenues of what vision means. And even like, in our facility here, we got a bunch of equipment, but it's connected with a strength and conditioning facility. There's not one weight in that facility that, hey, if I just lift this weight, I'm going to be great. There's a system that's, they go around a circuit, different exercises, progressions, different things that they do to get themselves to be more efficient. And that's the same thing with vision. And even back in the strength, sorry, I was going to say this, is a lot of these, good strength coaches evaluate you. And now hitting coaches are evaluating you as far as flexibility and all these different things. Well, if we're telling them to do something visual, but we're not evaluating their vision, are we really doing anything? And I think sometimes coaches tend to go that direction, and I don't blame them because they don't understand or don't know necessarily, but then they go away from it because they go, well, it didn't work. Well, it didn't work because we didn't know what was wrong to set that system up properly.
Interesting. Very interesting. We're going to get in depth on this. And one thing I just want us to do is send a message to everybody on Twitter and social media. And I want Ryan to know, Ryan, what I like about you is that you keep it simple. There's way too many complicated issues out there. There's too much stuff on Twitter, with fancy words and all this stuff. As a baseball coach, I just want to know the basic concept, what I need to work on. So kudos to you for how you train people. Now, what's interesting is what you just said. You evaluate players and then you set the program up. Give us an idea how that works.
Yeah. I wish there was a simple answer for that, but, what we do for our system and what we've done over many years, as we worked with all these different major league teams, is we would evaluate players on their visual skills. Now, their visual skills include their visual clarity. Now, I'm not an optometrist. My dad was. Now my sister is. She runs our medical side of things. But, a lot of optometrists don't check vision for playing sports. So it's not just going to the eye doctor and can they see, can they not see? There's a lot more to it. And so there's a battery of tests that we go through. We're able to do it with simple technology. We don't need all, huge technology, but there is some stuff like you'll see in the back that you asked me what changed. I have a new eye tracking device that's a rare device that gives me phenomenal information about eye movements. And it's not that it's a difference maker for me, but it's given me added knowledge to the stuff we already knew by doing some of our easier tests to find out what the eyes are doing. So part of it's experience of knowing how to look at the eyes and how the eye movements are, how the brain uses two eyes, how the clarity of stuff and how they function and how they affect the task at hand. And that's one thing, even though we talk baseball on this show, we do work with other athletes. And part of it is looking at what is the task for that athlete and what do we need to evaluate and what we can affect that athlete to perform better.
When you talk about the evaluation, okay, you do the evaluation. Now, the average person, the average coach that's online right now, and by the way, our good friend Victor Castillo from Mexico City says he's on because he's an optometrist and he wants to learn about the sports vision. Exactly what you said. What do we, as a coach, do we bring them to you first to do all that? Because the training, I know you train the athletes, but also the coaches need to understand they need to continue some training within their practices. Am I heading in the right direction there?
Yeah, I mean, I wish that was an easy answer, and it's getting to become easier. There are things.
Hey, I have no easy questions. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but there are some things that coaches can do to evaluate certain vision things. I had a question the other day. What if I try to get them to the optometrist and they don't go, or I don't know what the answer is? And the simple thing is, and you can do this from a hitting standpoint, put a chart out at, some letters out at the pitching mound, different sizes if you want, and just, cover one eye. Can you see that? That's a simple test that, or looking at the outfield fence. Do you see it as sharp out of the left eye as the right eye? if there's something that doesn't seem right, then, push them forward to get something further from an optometrist to evaluate. And just to add, an ophthalmologist, and I want to clarify this, is a surgeon. An optometrist is who you tend to want to go to for corrective vision. So there are some ophthalmologists that do some sports vision, but just like going to a physical therapist or you're going to a orthopedic surgeon, the surgeon wants to do surgery. That's their job. So
you got to find the right person that does the sports vision, and then they have to make the adjustments for you if you're weak or in certain areas.
Yeah, and even going to an optometrist doesn't always give the right answers
Right.
because they check you for reading, they check you for driving, and make sure everything's okay. So, you got to be really picky. And as an athlete, look, athletes don't want to admit that they're wrong. They don't want to admit that they failed. They want to pass everything. So they're going to tell their doctor, yeah, it looks great. Yeah, it looks great. I can see it. But my recommendation is be the pickiest you can be. And, even adding on to this, Peter, is with the collegiate teams that I've worked with, 30 to 40% of those teams all have a visual deficiency. And we're not talking about skills or tactics. We're talking about clarity issues right here. They're either wearing glasses in class, but not on the field, or they're prescribed for something, but not for playing baseball or softball or whatever, sport it is. So, the demands in that game at a high velocity, sometimes low contrast, they're different than what it takes to be in a classroom and it takes to driving the everyday. I mean, if you're a race car driver, obviously that's different than being a regular driver. But you got to be picky and make sure you got the best eyes. And I say this all the time. Look, players want the best equipment. They want the best bat. They want the best shoes. They want the best glove. Why wouldn't they want the best eyes to perform with?
And I was reading a quote by John Schuerholz, who has it on your website. I mean, he says these guys are the best. Talking about you guys, you're the best in the business in baseball and at the single most important part of the game. That tells it right there. I mean, pushing the limits of visual performance. If you can't, again, common sense. If you can't see it, the brain's certainly not going to be able to tell you what to do. And how are you going to move your body if you can't see it and the brain can't tell you what to do?
Yeah, you're based off estimations, and the better estimations you have, the better you're going to be. And we're talking about 20/20 vision or 20/15 vision, whatever you want to call it, 28 vision. But there are the other skill sets and the ability. And I had a major league player, who went through one of our testing protocols, which is more in depth than what most people do. And he passed with flying colors, phenomenal vision. I'm like, honestly, I can't really do much. You got the best eyes, that are out there. And I said, you see the ball differently than everyone else. You do this. And he looks at me and goes, how do you know that? I said, it's because these great eyes. I said, you also, when you have conversations with your teammates, and we're talking about major league players, they don't understand what you see. And he laughed and he goes, you're right. He goes, they think I'm crazy when I tell them I'm seeing spin and fingers and the ball slows down and all this stuff. And I look at them, he goes, I look at them and go, how do you hit if you don't see that stuff?
Amazing. And that brings a good point up, because we've had several people on the show discuss this. And, just like anything else, folks, I got to believe science, we know it's not perfect. There's always debate. The scientists even debate everything. But talk about, Ryan, the ability to pick the ball up and early as possible, and also whether it's arm angle, hand angle, or something that gives it away visually to be able to understand what the pitch is, what pitch is coming. How realistic is that?
Well, Pete, I'm going to bounce around on this question, because here's the thing. That's the easiest thing for people to talk about. Early recognition, get your eyes, just aim your eyes, look at it, look at the release point, all these different things. But, really pitch recognition is what it comes down to. And people want better pitch recognition. And there's a lot of factors to it. It's not a simple software. It's not a simple net. It's not a simple tool that does it. Again, going back to understanding the athlete and asking the right questions and finding out what they see and what they don't see, and then how we impact that. Now, pitch recognition is based off experiences. If you have no experience of what you've seen before, you'll never know what pitch recognition is. And so pitch recognition to me starts with getting good at seeing the late break of a pitch. Players have to get better at tracking the ball more efficiently. And we can do things in our peripheral. We can do things in a haze. We can get lucky. We can do things through experience. But the more that they get really good quality imagery into their brain of what the pitch is doing, now once they get good at picking the ball up earlier, their brain goes, aha, I know exactly what that's going to do based off previous experiences. But if I don't have any of those experiences put into play, I don't have that trajectory, I don't have good visual information, or I don't have accurate visual information, my pitch recognition is going to be off tremendously.
What does the right tracking look like?
Well, it depends. So if you're talking about, taking a pitch, that might be a little bit different than swinging. Okay. It should be different than swinging. Taking a pitch is not the Pete Rose style of a lot of head movement.
Yeah.
And the reason is a lot of head movement, when the brain moves like that, the body wants to fight for balance. It doesn't like to fall. So if you think about like resources, you got these resources. If all the resources are going to balance, your brain's not inhaling, what I call inhaling that visual information. So I kind of, the way I dumb things down a little bit, try not to get too technical, but it's almost like these lasers that are coming out of these eyes, like the old Superman tractor beams. And as you tracking that ball, you want both eyes on that ball, trying to track it as long as possible. Now, you're going to have people that are going to fight me, and they're going to say, well, the research says you can't track it all the way. Well, that's not true. There is a research out there that says it, but it's again, research, you can argue a lot of the ways the research has been done and who was in it and all these different things. There are a lot of players that with good ocular metrics, and I say that because look, if they got tight eye muscles, they may not track very well. Or if they have poor depth perception or visual coordination issues, they're not going to track like someone who has really good eyes, the ability to track that ball as deep as they can. So if I'm taking a pitch, I'd really work on tracking as long as you can and see the trajectory, see where it crosses the plate, and see the spin on the ball. Not just look, but really, again, like the tractor beams carrying that ball all the way in. And I say that when I say don't just look, because even as you look at me, you can see colors around me. You can see shapes around me, but you're not getting a lot of detail. And that's what a lot of our vision tends to be in, is not detail oriented. We tend to be in the softer peripheral focus, and we see colors and we see motion in our peripheral. But when we're fine-tuned in our central focus, that's where we see detail. And when the right eye and the left eye are both centrally focused on the right target, that's where our brain's getting the most accurate information for us to make the most accurate reaction to it. So working on tracking, I honestly, I can tell you all the good and bad of all the equipment out there. There's nothing really great out there. There's nothing bad either, but there's no one answer to these equipment. And, a lot of people are interested in VR, and there's some value of VR, and there's some diminishing results of VR. The real best training that these hitters should be doing is standing in a bullpen with intent of tracking and watching trajectory and ingraining in their brain all that visual information that they need to compete later.
And when they're tracking, the eyes are tracking it. And I love what you said, because I think we forget this a little bit, but the eyes are giving you balance, because if you can control that, it keeps your body balanced. Like you said, if you move your head, boom, you're off balance. Now we're done. And not just in hitting, we're done in anything, pitching, fielding, throwing, whatever it may be. So the eyes control it. So can your eyes, as your eyes track the ball, can your head move a little bit? Will it move because the eyes allowed it to? I know I'm getting, maybe it's not important.
No, it is important. Look, your head's going to move, so it's not going to be perfectly still. It should move a little bit, but you shouldn't focus on the head movement. You shouldn't try to have someone, keep their head still, because to me, if I try to keep my head still, now all of a sudden my neck's locked up and everything's shoulders are tightened up and everything's here, right? And at the same time, if I told you to look to the right, you would move your head like this to look to the right. If I said look to the left, you'd move your head to this. that's not what we really want is all that head movement. Is we want these eyes to move as quickly as they can. They're very quick, and move them quick as they can. And then if I want to look to the right quick, get my eyes over there and let my head kind of follow my eyes. So my head kind of moves instead of moving my head first and eyes second.
You know, something you're hearing a lot now that I remember in the old days, I couldn't hit a curveball, you know, and the curveball's tough to hit because, you know, especially 12-6 where it drops down. And something people are doing now, and again, till you try it, and if it works, obviously, what I like to know is, does it work? In other words, whatever you've learned, you've applied it, and now it's working for that player. That's all I like to know. I don't care about the science as much. I want to make sure it gets done. But if I sit there now and watch curveball over curveball after curveball for every day for months, is that building in my brain like a database so that when I see that pitch?
It depends how visually engaged you are. If you're just going in there and talking smack and go, yeah, I see it, you know, and talking about, you know, what's going on in the stands and do it lazy. No, I don't think there's value in it. But if you go in there and with intent and visual intent, visual focus, picking up and even going back, and I'll go back on this in just a minute about the early recognition, but really tracking really well. And then what I would do if I was coaching is I would have that player step out of the box, okay, or step away and repicture what they saw.
Just like a game.
Yep. Visualize what they just saw and then visualize their reaction. If they were going to swing at it, put a swing on it. If they're going to take it, put that take on it. Instead of just getting in there and going, oh, yeah, good. You know, you want to get in there with all your plan, all your actions of getting there and seeing that ball well.
So when a guy takes a pitch and you see very little movement, in other words, there's no rotation, you know, check swing, or vice versa, that, you know, let's take the first one where he just takes it. That means he saw it so well. He already knew it was going to be a ball about 15, 20 feet out of the hand.
Yeah. Think about some of those guys that you watch that have so much confidence. And even, you know, people who are catchers, that sometimes you look at a player and you're like, man, he's on this. You know, I don't even know what to throw this guy, because you could see his process of getting in there. When the people are nervous or they're stressed or they're jumpy or bouncy or a lot of movement, I just laugh because they're not seeing the ball like they need to see it. So it's an easier for the pitcher or the coach to go, we got him, because he's not seeing what we're throwing right now on there.
Let me understand this. Are we trying to beat the ball to the location where it's going to be in some ways visually?
Well, you know, technically, scientifically, things are already happening by the time they're coming in. So, you know, people think, okay, I got to see in front. I got to see in front. I don't disagree with some of that stuff. But I think you got to be careful because, you know, again, it goes back to words and how you're coaching that athlete and what they see. And, you know, you have to, it's not a one way, only way, because again, every player you got has different neurovisual cognitive capabilities. So trying to figure out how to turn those on is the right answer. So if they need to think that way, I'm all for it. But some guys might hear it that way and not make sense. You know, I use this as an example. I don't know if I hear it as much as we used to hear this, but hit the inside half of the ball, you know, hit the inside half of the ball. And to me, I don't like that because it made me feel like I was kind of doing something like this.
Yeah.
And, you know, and every coach would tell you, you got to do it this way, you got to do it so. And I'm like, but it doesn't fit who I am and how I perceive the world. So you got to understand how I perceive the world. I might see things higher. I might see things further away. I might see things on the outside. I might see things lower. So if my brain isn't accurate to what you're trying to tell me to do, it doesn't help me. Now, finding out that methodology is, like, for me, I like looking at the outside half of the ball, the lower outside half of the ball. Now, a lot of guys say, oh, I don't like that because it feels like a wrap.
Right.
But I don't see it that way. I see it as driving through the ball to get to the outside of the ball. It gives me a really good feeling of approach to the game. So without having to think I got to get my arms through the approach and I got to think this, because if I'm thinking about my shoulders and thinking about my arms, now I'm not seeing the ball. But if I find a way to kind of, and I kind of joke around for the older guys who remember this, the Ginsu knife, slice it and dice it.
Yeah.
What am I looking at? What part is my target? And an example to this would be shooting. If I'm shooting a gun and shooting at a target and I'm constantly missing, I may aim higher so I can hit that target.
I've done that.
Yeah. Now it's not right necessarily because I'm aiming at that little target above there, but I'm hitting the target. So I'm getting what I need to. So, that comes into visual accuracy and, playing with your visual accuracy to figure out what works. So, if my eyes are behind, I'm going to be late on a pitch. So yeah, you do want them in front, but there are people that, and this, you asked me these in depth and they're getting some good answers here, I think, but the way the eyes work, some guys' eyes see things closer to them than it actually is. Okay. So usually this guy is a fastball hitter, tends to pull pitches, slow pitching eats them up, faster pitching, they do well, off speed, they tend to struggle with because they see things closer to them. So they think it's there. So they're starting everything early. So if you're telling this guy to get his eyes in front, now he's really early on there because that's how he sees things. So, I look at things differently, again, not a physical fix, but what is his vision telling his body to do? Can we affect that vision? Do we need to train those muscles to be more fluid and flexibility and accurate so that his body catches up to what his eyes are telling him?
And that reminds me of this because, it's no different than training a pitcher or pregame warm-up, flexibility work. Everybody is different and they need different type of exercises to strengthen certain areas. We're not training them, cookie cutter style. And on that hitting, even me, I always told myself, I want to hit the back of the ball, where the fat part of the barrel is. And that helped me understand. So there's 3 different examples right there of 3 different people. And the other thing that it reminds me of what you just said is we got to ask a lot of questions, and we really need to study this because as a coach, we need to understand this a little bit if we're going to train players with sports vision. So my question is this: what are some of the things we possibly as coaches are doing wrong? Okay. And 2, what are some of the things, I know as coaches, we can't do it all because we have to, we need to bring them to the experts, but what are some things we can do while we're out there in practice? Even if it's a couple things, help us with both of those.
Well, I think the easiest thing is asking the simple question of what did you see? What did you see? Have them describe what they saw. And you might have to ask more questions to that, but I saw a blur. I saw, and keeping that open with all your players, because you're going to hear one guy say, I saw the hand on the release point, and every other player is going to go, this guy is crazy, but maybe we can learn from him what he's doing, and maybe we can apply that to help that player. And, even like a swing and a miss per se, or I'll take swing miss and I'll bring another. We tend to want, hey, keep your elbow down. Well, why did my elbow go down? Maybe I didn't see the ball right or accurately to do that. Or keep your butt down on an infield ball. Well, why did my butt come down? Maybe my eyes came up and I didn't track it all the way into my glove. Most of the actions are preceded by a visual mistake. So if we can find that visual mistake out and ask those questions, we come up with answers. Now, the problem is what most people say is, I see the ball. Oh, I saw the ball. I saw the ball. Well, what did you see on it? What do you mean? So I'll give you an example. I'll give you 2 examples here. I had a player tell me one time, Ryan, I'm seeing the ball so good, I'm just swinging at bad pitches. I said, okay. You obviously don't know what it means to see the ball well, because
that didn't make any sense.
Yeah, you're not connecting the 2 on there. What you're seeing is soft focus. You're seeing the blur. You're seeing the general information. Okay. Now the other is tee work, and people are hitting balls off tees, and they are worried about their work ethic. They're worried about how much time they're putting in and how many balls they're hitting. I got to hit 100 balls. I got to hit 100 balls. I got to hit 100 balls. Okay. So they get in there and they swing, and they never engage their visual system. And what I mean by that, some coaches and some players love to put the balls on the same direction. Now, I'm not against it, but the reality is why. I still struggle with that because the ball's never going to be in the right seam direction that you want when you're hitting it. So you're just hitting a ball, right? But at the same time, most of them don't. If I ask the ones that don't do it that way, I'll ask them this question: which direction were the seams on the ball? And they'll always say, I don't know, because all they were doing was swinging at a white blur on that tee instead of readdressing their target. What's my target? I got this bat, my target's the ball. They need to fine tune something on that ball. They need to look for a scratch mark. They need to look for a seam. They need to look for a letter. Now they're engaging their vision going, okay, that's my target. They're putting it in their brain, looking away, and then coming back and focusing on that. Instead of just putting it on there going swing, 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 and the eyes are going up. And so, again, I would encourage asking that question. What are you looking at? When you're on defense, when you're a pitcher, where are your eyes at any given moment, and what can we do to change that? Someone asked me about pitching the other day and said, should they always be focused on the right on a certain target? Well,
I heard that.
It's the same thing. Look, if that works, yeah, I'm all for it. But maybe he's still spiking the ball. So even though you want him to hit the left knee guard, maybe you need to have him focus on the forehead. That's going to create the trajectory that you want. So the eyes, we're strong believers. Eyes lead the mind and the body. Eyes lead. So what's our visual target? Where do our eyes need to be at the right given moment to be able to see things? Now, kind of jump around a little bit and add your question here. Here's another funny thing that I find in baseball, especially in softball too, but I find this in baseball. The hitter strikes out. The on-deck hitter asks him, as well, the guys maybe in the dugout ask him, what did you see?
Tradition.
Yeah. What did you see? Why are you asking the guy that just failed? He just failed at the task. He obviously did not see what he needed to be seeing. And then you got this guy that comes in that strikes out and goes, man, his cutter is just slicing. It's just dicing. It's mess. It's so now the on-deck circle guy goes to play. What do you think he's thinking? He's thinking about this ball moving. And now he's pre-programmed and pre-planned this ball that's just breaking and stuff. Now he's messed up. Instead of understanding what each person sees and how they see and what they need to go about to be successful at their task, whatever their task is.
Awesome points. And I also wanted to mention, so if I'm looking at pictures and the guy's struggling, like Fernando, he used to look up and then look down.
Yeah.
Other guys do different things. Again, we're training individuals. We're not training one person.
But Fernando was very visual. Okay. Just so I want you to understand this, even though his eyes were in the air, his brain was very visual on his target and his task. He doesn't have to have his eyes aimed exactly there to be highly visual. The brain is the visual system. The eyes are what gives us good information. Now, it doesn't mean we always need it, but so in that pitching situation, even though he was here, his focus was at that target, and he could picture that target in his brain as he was going. He wasn't focused on the clouds. He wasn't looking at a bird flying over. Yeah. That would be a visual distraction that would cause that.
Interesting. And, I love that. And I'm thinking about that as you say that, I could think I'm looking up, but yet in my brain, I'm seeing the outside corner of the plate where I'm going to throw it.
Yeah. And that goes, Peter, just even you asked the questions, every player's different. Some guys, I may want their eyes to be right on that target because they need to. But other guys, that's too hard. It's not the right thing. We need to figure out, or we might need to teach them to get their eyes to the target at the last split second, not there before. Or they need to be there before, and then they need to relax their vision and then get it back. Or they need to be better visualizers to do that. And I'll bring this up right now is my pet. I got a few pet peeves.
Good, bring them up because I want to hear those.
One of the things my dad started in the 70s, he talked a lot about visualization. He's not the godfather of visualization, but it wasn't talked about a lot in those days. And visualization is picturing, okay? It's how the eyes perceive information. If we've never seen something, it's hard to visualize what we want. And I kind of even was thinking about this earlier today, and I was thinking about an animal. And this animal is called an okapi. And I don't know how many of you guys know what an okapi is. Okay. Now, it's a real animal out there. It's OKAPI. And I want you guys, as you guys are listening, picture that okapi. Okay. Picture what an okapi would look like, what you think it might be. And I guarantee you, every single one of you have a different picture right now, a different accuracy, because you've never seen what an okapi is. Now,
Hey, Brian, I picture it as like a squirrel with big eyes, bigger than his head.
You know, I'll give you a little bit of understanding of what an okapi is. It's actually, it's a combination of an animal, but it's there. It's actually in the giraffe family. And it's kind of got a head that looks like a giraffe. It's got a little longer neck. It's got a torso that's more like a horse. Okay. So the middle of it's like a horse. It's not real tall. And it's actually back hind legs look more like a zebra. They're striped on there. And he's got little white feet, all these different things. Okay. Now, again, he also has little horns on the head that look like a giraffe on there. Now, again, I've given you some description to help you understand what it looks like, but I guarantee you, again, we all have different pictures of what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we're telling someone they need to do this, but they've never seen it. They don't know what it needs to look like to do what it needs to do. That's where I think some of the technology is cool, you know, and useful, even the, you know, whether it's a picture with the spin and stuff. Now they're seeing what they want that spin to do. And now that we have that picture of what we want to see, the accuracy of what we want to see, now we can replay it and program it for the future. So I don't have, if you gave me screen share, I could show you what the picture is, but you could look it up with an okapi.
Yeah, I'm a rookie at that.
On there. Don't worry about it.
We'll look it up.
It's probably way different than what we think. But now that you see it, if I asked you again, you go, I know what that okapi looks like.
That.
I can picture it accurate. And so the power of pictures is phenomenal. And those pictures come through the eyes to get there. So back on this visualization, whether it's pitchers, whether it's hitters, we got to feed the right visual information into them so that they have the right answers and the right adjustments to create those imagery. So when we talk about pitching, some of those guys are phenomenal visualizers. And, you know, Tiger Woods was a great visualizer, or probably still is, maybe visualizing the wrong stuff at one point in his career. Michael Jordan was a phenomenal visualizer. Barry Bonds was a phenomenal visualizer. I'm sure Tom Brady's a phenomenal visualizer. These guys, in fact, I listened to Phil Mickelson the other day on a podcast, and he talked about how visualization changed his career. And he even brought something up I thought was interesting. He goes, if Tiger Woods never changed his mechanics, he would have never beat Tiger Woods. But Tiger Woods chased mechanics instead of chasing what made him successful.
And that'd be visual. Yeah, that'd be visual. Now, so just so I understand this, if I have the ability to videotape the picture that I'm facing, in other words, I videotaped them in 3-4 games facing me, I go back and watch those 3 games of him pitching against me, and I'm going to face him tomorrow. Is that going to give me an advantage?
Yeah, I think there's ways to get better advantage out of it. I mean, you want to picture what that pitcher's thrown, and you want to be able to picture how you're going to react to it. And a lot of people cut their visualizations short. They don't finish they just see it and go. You know, they just give it lip service. But, you know, I think obviously, you know, VR gives a little bit, but I don't think the picture quality is there yet. 2D screen, it's best that you got right there. The problem is, in my book, it's going to help certain people that know how to use it properly, just like knowing how to use the weight. Most people just look at it and go, "Oh, it looks good." You know, "Oh, that looked good." You know, I you know, being working in professional and looking in the minor leagues, you know, they put the video of the pitcher they're going to face that night. These guys will go up and go, "Oh, got it. I'm good." You know, and never really look at what's better is in the future is, especially in VR, the future is going to be really cool. But is understanding where they're looking, you know, eye tracking. You know, the eye tracking is not there in most of the technology that people think is there. But getting accurate of understanding, well, are they just looking, or are they really picking that ball up out of that release point and tracking it all the way to completion. And
Well, that reminds me, and I sorry to interrupt, but I've always asked kids. I remember asking a lot of players, "What are you looking at?" They give you the standard, teaching principle. Well, I look at the overall picture, and then I focus on the release point.
yeah,
Isn't everybody? We just said everybody's individual.
yeah.
So what's the real thing there? What do we really do?
Yeah. So, Pete, like I said, when we evaluate, we'll know a little bit more about a player's visual skills.
Yeah.
So we know what they do. But I'll give you an example of a player. He was I won't even tell you who he is, college player that had very, very good success in his last year. Unfortunately, shut down. But prior to that, when he stepped in the plate, I asked him, "What are you looking at?" And he looks at me and goes, "What do you mean?" "I'm just looking at the pitcher." Okay, I said, "What happens when he steps? What are you looking at?" "I don't know. I think I'm looking at his hat." "Okay. Now when I go in my hands break, what are you looking at?" I think like the release point." "Well, where's the release point?" "Well, I think you're up there, but I haven't shown you. So how do you know?" And so a lot they sit there and go, "Oh, yeah, I really don't know what I'm looking at. I just kind of generally looking." Now, he also has some ocular metric skill sets where his eye muscles, the way his eyes track, aren't smooth. They're very jumpy. They tend to jump around a little bit under control, not under control, I should say. Okay. Now there's some training that we worked on to work on those muscles, but beyond that, he still doesn't have real smooth ocular motor skill sets. Okay. So and part of it is the best way to think about this is his mind wanders. And when your mind wanders, your eyes tend to want to wander. Okay. So for his situation, we need to have a controlled visual pattern to keep his eyes in line in a sense, but at the release point at the right time. Okay. Now, the reason is, I kind of mentioned this earlier, you have about 5 degrees of clarity of vision. Okay. The rest is color motion. If I'm swinging at motion, and that's our soft focus, that's what most of your players are doing. They're swinging at our motion, but we want to swing at ball. So we want that clarity, that 5 degrees on the ball at the right time. Now, if you're there too late, you're in trouble. Okay. If you're there too early, you're in trouble. So you got to figure out that timing mechanism that gets their eyes at the right time to that release point. Now,
and that's different for everybody, possibly.
It might be. Yeah, we might go a little sooner. We might go a little later.
So as a coach, I have to help that player figure out what that is.
Yeah, I mean, part of it, I'd say, like we talk about switching. Okay, so first of all, if my release point's here, or if my release point's you can't see, but sidearm, or if it's way up here, it's a little bit different. So we got to find out when our eyes switch to something, and you can do this in your house, do whatever. Is maybe you got a clock along the way, or a letter on a wall or something, is when you look away and then switch to the inside of that letter or the inside of that number, it's the sharpest vision you have. Okay. That's where your brain is locked in. That's the best clarity. So if we're there too long, it starts to blur up on us. So what we want to do is get good at switching there at the right time. So, but if I'm switching to here, I'm not seeing this. So we got to make sure we're switching right at the ball, where that ball is. So I look at things backwards. Okay. Where's the ball? Now, how do I get to here? If I stare here, I'm in trouble. If I'm way out here, I'm in trouble. So the easiest thing, since we're here, is maybe coming here to here. But obviously when I get this way, it might be the ear to here. Okay. And getting there at the right time. Now, there is a problem of looking here too long, because when we stare, we think too much and our vision blurs. So we have to have relaxed eyes. So we want these eyes to move. So we might have different patterns, different ways. It might be what people call, soft focus, but people say open focus. Right. New word, new ways of seeing things. Okay. Now, the problem with this soft focus and trying to zoom in, if you zoom in the wrong spot, you're in trouble. So depending on the player, we might change what makes them get to this at the right spot. This is all that matters. All this other stuff prior is just distractions or ways to get them to be more efficient to being here on there. Okay. Now you mentioned about being in front. Yeah. You want to be a little bit in front because you want to be there a little bit earlier than the ball gets there, but that's something you play with to do that. So how do you play with it is BP, okay, or bullpen. Guys throwing BP to you, stand behind the cage if you're not hitting, and just work on switching to the ball. Work on different methods. Figure out, I mean, I got a method, obviously, and I got ways to teach guys methods. But if I have my suggestions, experiment. Figure out what doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out what works. Figure out, I mean, knowing what doesn't work is almost as important as knowing what works.
Yeah.
And even though you think something works, doesn't mean you can't change it, or doesn't mean you can't adapt or move at different things. But you got to find a way to get your eyes at the right place at the right time and get your brain inhaling. If I'm thinking about mechanics, it's not going to get there. If I'm thinking about the fans in the stands, it's not going to get there right. Okay. If I'm thinking about hitting a home run and not seeing the ball, I'm in trouble. Okay. And as you talk to major leaguers, they may not always understand what they're doing, but they always talk about the importance of seeing the ball. And, you know, it's been pretty fun, you know, doing this for so long. And, you know, players that worked with my dad and they have kids, and then I get their kids coming through and I start seeing their kids, and their kids come to me, or even guys that didn't see my dad, and they go, my dad always tells me I got to get good at seeing the ball. So they always want to pick my brain because
Sure.
they know that's the language they need to get themselves to be better. So, you know, even back circling to your original question, what coaches can do, use the words, just talk about it. Don't be afraid of it. I mean, even if it's wrong, it's still right because you're talking about vision and you're getting them to think about seeing the ball differently. And that's
Absolutely.
what you got to do is get them to see.
Absolutely. You know what I love is, you know, I was just thinking about, you know, if I have a young kid who's missing the ball a lot, obviously he's having problems seeing the ball. So if I ask him, what are you looking at? He gives you a response. Now we may have to change what he's looking at.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, again, that's an individualized thing. The other thing I want to mention, Ryan, I just want the folks to know, because if you have parents who are, especially at the younger levels, always talking to their kids prior to going up the bat and everything, you know, people say, well, I can't control my parents. They say all kinds of stuff in the stands. The problem is the kids hear that. And like you said, they're thinking mechanics. And your dad had an article. That's how I met him. Your dad had an article in Sports Illustrated, some big magazine, that talked about that. And I said, listen, I said, Coach, all you got to do is take this article by this expert and send it to your parents, because then they'll know that they're doing misjustice to their kids when they go up the bat trying to teach them. And I still remember that day. That's how I met your dad.
Yeah. You know, Pete, I'm not a good salesman, just so you know. You know, we've talked about this in the past, but you know, there are some decent resources, but you don't need $1 million budget to do this.
No.
You can do things off a shoestring budget. And, you know, my dad wrote some books that I helped him with. You know, there's 3 books, one's on hitting, one's on pitching, and one's on like the pros. And he did a really interesting thing. And it's stories about players that he worked with, but things they do. And what coaches have been telling me, and I know it, but it's great to hear, is if they read it, they're going to highlight a lot of stuff that there's things that they can apply and carry on. A lot of the answers are in those books.
So he wrote, when he was working with a hitter, exactly what he was doing with that hitter.
Yeah, I mean, he told them in a story format.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, it's like, okay, you know, George Brett, when he was doing this and he would do this to get back on task. And so there's really good information for coaches in there that they'll learn some language, they'll learn some words, and they'll learn some stuff. I think, you know, there's no perfect answer. There's no one pill. Everyone wants that one pill. It's not that. It's a discovery process. It's a system. It's a, you know, we just talk about sensory expansion, Jim. This is a full vision needs to be a part of your practice every day. And it doesn't mean you need to buy anything new. Okay. Now, obviously we got stuff if you want to buy, we use wiffle ball machines. We use posters, we use cords, we use colors, we used a lot of different things, but just even talking about how you've seen the ball, or talking about what are you looking for, or, you know, what's going on with this, or what were you looking at? Those are just as good, you know, for working on trying to get in a heightened visual awareness.
Ryan, I'm going to get a question here. Let's go to him because I forgot to get to the question. Victor Castillo, he mentions, let's see here. Do you know the concept of dynamic visual acuity in batting? What would that mean? Well, you may have addressed it already.
Say that again.
It asks here, question of Ryan Harrison. Do you know the concept of dynamic
Oh, the
visual
concept of dynamic
acuity
visual acuity. Yeah.
and
Sorry.
batting?
Yeah. Basically, visual acuity is static in a chart. It's basically looking at a chart and can you see letters, black and white in a dark room? Okay. It's important. Sometimes they'll do a contrast visual acuity where it has to do with light. Dynamic has more to do with movement, whether the chart's moving or where the person's moving and how well they see. And that's one thing, he brings up. It is another concept that people don't understand is it's not just being static visually, it's how we see when we move. And that's what we do. A lot of stuff in our training is a lot of movement and vision at the same time. I'm not going to say I'm not a fan, but because there's reasons to do certain things. But a lot of the stuff we try to integrate as much activity, movement, balls, and have them understanding what they see and why they see.
I know one of the drills you love a lot, and you showed it on MLB Network, and that was the wiffle ball machine. I love that with the small balls, but you're catching them. You notice the guys were catching it. Talk about that drill, because again, we're back to stations at practice, having that as a station, but also I was thinking as you were talking, as another station is working on trying to pick up a ball only and understanding how to do that.
There's two different machines we use that you referred to. One is the Max BP machine, which is over my left ear, I guess it is. And that's a high velocity wiffle ball machine. Shoots about, up to about, equivalent to about 80, 90 miles an hour, maybe even higher than that, depending on your charge and the distance. And, we do the stuff that we do is just really tracking drills with it and catching, track and catch. And we get them in the hitting position and work on tracking. We have catchers doing stuff. And you can use small bats. We'll use small bats, stick bats. We'll use regular bats. And I know someone mentioned about bunting. It's basically aim small, miss small, but doing it with velocity. We got a lot of professional players, more and more showing it these days. But we had a lot of guys that didn't talk about it. They would do it as a pregame warm up. They would do it as a training program on there. In fact, I had Jeremy Giambi on it, and we were talking about because he had an older version, and he used to hit in his house with a little wiffle ball machine.
Yeah.
Now the other one is a ping pong ball machine, and that shoots 160 balls a minute. So it's a rapid fire machine. And what some of the things we do on there is visual decision making. So we'll put a yellow and a white ball in there. And I'm not big. I'm not against, but I'm not big on colors necessarily of labeling. What I'd rather have people do is react to a color. Okay. So instead of saying that was a red, that was a blue. So with the yellow, what they're doing is yellow with their right hand, white with their left hand. Okay. Or if they're hitting colored balls, it's hit the red, take the blue, pull the the white, opposite field the yellow, making adjustabilities based off what they see. It is kind of more where I lean towards.
Love it. Hey, Ryan, a lot of young kids have outfielders, especially in the outfield, they have trouble judging a fly ball. Can you kind of talk about that and maybe give some advice on how to work with some young players on that?
Yeah. I
know it's a hard one.
Turn him into an infielder, maybe.
Yeah. But you need those skills in the infield too, because you're going to get a pop-up. I know that.
Yeah. No, the reality is, and again, it becomes a checklist trying to find out what's going on. Do they have visual clarity issues? Are they using both eyes? Is it a depth perception issue? Is it a confidence level? Is it a lighting issue? Contrast sensitivity? Is it a focus issue? Is it an eye aiming issue that they're looking in the wrong spot on there? So there are kind of lots of different kind of drills and different things to do. And some of it is just experience too. You take a guy that's never caught fly balls, they go out there, they look foolish, every single time. Until they become comfortable with it. So, simple things might be closed eyes, toss a ball in the air, have them find it and catch it. Okay. A lot of people do these football drills or over the shoulder kind of drills, things like that. The other from a high is hitting balls and have them with their back to it, And once they hear the smack, they got to turn around and get their eyes to focus on it. I'd also get them to look at a part of the ball. Don't just look at the whole ball. I'd have them look at a spot on the ball. Look at the left side of the ball, the right side of the ball, the inside, just, again, slice it and dice it in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
That's if they don't have any visual issues.
Sure.
I did have a player in the minor leagues, and I remember he was struggling in the outfield. And the coaches said to me, has he had his eyes checked? I'm like, well, matter of fact, yes. He's got really good eyes. And 2, he's got pretty damn good depth perception. So it wasn't his visual problems. What we tend to figure it out was he's never played a night game before. So he was adjusting to different lighting conditions that he had never adapted to before. So he had to kind of ingrain his projection of where things are based off different lighting conditions. And he got better. It was just a matter of, giving him some different techniques to work on to get his accuracy more efficient.
On defense, one of the things is trying to get a good jump. Obviously, visual has everything to do with that. Are we still teaching individually on a defensive standpoint where they're looking at, compared to, am I looking at the pitcher's wind up and then throwing the ball? Am I looking at home plate? Again, that's an individual thing. You got to learn what best works for you, correct?
Kind of. I mean, yes and no. And the reason I say no is, again, like I said earlier on the hitting, your eyes work when they switch to a specific spot. Okay? That's where they work best. Now, if you think about it, if you're watching the pitcher and then you're tracking the ball the whole way, and you mentioned this earlier, is, your eyes are behind. The information is a little bit behind. So if you're trying to track that ball going to home plate, you're 99% of the time, you're going to be behind that ball. And the actions are going to happen by the time you get there. Okay? So what you want to do is, to me, the pitcher doesn't matter. Okay? They really don't matter, because you have peripheral vision, like I said about motion. You see things move in your peripheral. You can see that the pitcher moves or started their motion in the peripheral. That's enough information to do that. Now what we have to do is not overstare at the contact point, but we have to switch our eyes to the contact point. Okay? Get that timing down. Play with that timing. And if people are jumping in the air, like everyone's big on, and they're landing hard, guess what their brain's doing? Turning those eyes off.
And that was going to be my next question, is the pre-step.
Yeah. So if you got too much of a hard landing, your brain's going to shut those eyes off. They're not going to function nearly as good. Now, there are guys who can do it. There's guys that have good visual skill sets that when they do that, it doesn't shut the eyes off. But you're talking about a small percentage, and that's why they're probably big leaguers, because they have that ability to do it under motion. But when you're talking about youth, a lot of them don't have those visual capabilities to handle that up and down movement and be accurate to what they see. So they're going to be late in reacting.
Well, that's why we got to be careful, because we say, because I make that mistake. I look at a big league guy, he does a different, like a hop that keeps him in movement. But now you got a 12-year-old, 14-year-old that doesn't have visual skills, and you're teaching them that drill. That could hurt them more than help them.
Yeah, I had a girl, a softball, D1 softball player that was jumping up and down, bouncing, okay, as the pitch would go. She'd do it every single pitch. She'd bounce up and down. And, we talked about what we're talking about here, but then the other thing I asked her, I said, well, how about late in the game? How do you feel? She goes, I'm exhausted. Okay, so fatigue has a lot to do with vision. So if you're bouncing up and down and having all this movement, and by the end of the game, your vision is fatigued, you're messing that up as well. So, I get where some people come from. I get the tennis stuff. I get the understanding of, my degree in exercise physiology. I'm not a physiologist, but I understand some of the movements. But I also, I look at things differently than a majority of people. I look at what are the eyes doing? How are they affected? And is it a positive or negative effect to the eyes? And how do we put it in a positive effect?
And as you mentioned briefly, I believe at the beginning, the other area we need to discuss is we could be doing things right visually, but if nutritionally we're not eating well, if we're not getting sleep, if we're not training properly, on skill development or strength and flexibility, all those things are going to affect your vision.
Yep.
So, I mean, so it's a big picture here. But again, it's an hour show, hour and 15. We got about another 10, maybe 10 minutes left to go. We're not going to get it all in, but I'm trying to think like a coach a little bit. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, on deck, I'm trying to teach kids on deck to pay attention, to look at how you're going to pick up the ball early. That's basic concept. Is there anything else to add to on deck that hitters can do that might help them?
I mentioned this, you might've heard me the other day on this, some people have different methods, and the one that I know that Mike Sweeney put into play, and because of my dad, and this is something he put all the time in, was he was really good in the on deck circle. And I'm not saying he's the only one, there's other guys that do this, but really good at getting in a position to hit and really working on switching to the release point and tracking the pitch live and seeing the trajectory of what it's doing. And then in between the pitches, he would replay what he just saw, what the guy just threw. And he would either put a swing like he would want to, or he would take that pitch like he needed to. And so he played a game within how he would have gone against that pitch that he just did. But a lot of guys get in there and they're swinging at the pitch while the pitch is being thrown, or they're not visually engaged into the actual action. So that's really what I would encourage, is get highly visual in the action of the pitch, and then in between the pitch, replay it and put the result you want to put on it.
And you made it pretty clear that visual training is not just about seeing the baseball. It's about painting that picture. I mean, and I've got it in my head now because you've said it enough. And I think we need to continue to say that, because I think that's great. When it comes to batting practice, similar thing, you should have some kind of a workup station with several things that allows them to visualize the ball better.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. You got players, we talk about fatigue, nutrition, all this stuff, but you got players running from class, coming out there, broke up with their girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. They got, mom and dad just yelled at them for their grades. You got all these things going on, and now you want them to focus on the task. So we got to kind of trick them. We got to put them into a highly visual state. So there are definitely things that we do, or you could do, from some of the tools that we use, like the eye track, or our 3D depth perception is a phenomenal tool that we use with players, and players use it before the game and get themselves in the right visual mindset to do what they need to do, make sure their eyes are working right. So there's other things you can do too, but there's some things to get their eyes and their brain right before they get to BP, for say, or before they play catch. And so we do have some coaches that will put a station as a station prior to getting into the cage. But I would also emphasize vision in whatever little other stations you have. Let's say it's in the BP. They're actually hitting. Okay. Instead of worrying about results, let's worry about quality of what we see. So ask them, how well do they see each ball? Give them a scale of 1 to 10. I saw it like an 8. I saw it like a 9. I saw it like a 6.
Yeah, we don't ask that enough.
No, now they're thinking about what I saw and not, what I felt on there. And that kind of brings up another thing, Peter, I talk about this a lot too. Players always tell me, especially when they get to spring training, I got to get my feel down. I got to get my feel. I'm working on my feel of my hands. I'm working on my feel of my elbow.
Yeah.
When the hitters are great, they have no feeling. They see things, they go, wow, how did I do that? But when we're worried about our feel, we're never seeing. So get them in that see mode, and that feel's going to take care of itself.
And that I'm going to raise my hand on that, because I've always taught, how does it feel? How does it feel? Of course, I've been around you, so I made some changes along the way. But I was teaching that. The other area would be, something we're always, as coaches, we're always trying to figure out. We got guys on the bench. Obviously we have ways to keep them interested and keep them motivated and keep them learning the game. There's ways to do that with stopwatches and all that. But more importantly, visually, how do we keep them in the game? Now, as a coach, I could ask questions about, what did you see here? But what else can we do?
Well,
anything else?
I think that's, you could play some games of who picked the pitch up quicker, who picked it up, what are they seeing? Where's the release point? How high is the release point? is his release point consistent or is it changing? Obviously, in the era of the old era of cheating, picking pitches, not the technology version of this, but
Right.
the old high version. There's a story that I know real well of Barry Bonds in the All-Star game sitting next to Pat Corrales, and Pat said something to him, and Barry says, "What do you mean you don't see that?" And he starts calling pitches like right here, and Pat's like, "How do you see that?" So you can play that game of how quick you can pick that up and different things. Sometimes, we give pitchers credit and they should, they have they have an advantage, but sometimes they give us the answers before we even know it. And, I'll tell you a story. I was in a minor league game again, and I started calling these pitches out, and these players go, "How do you see that?" Well, guess what? Here's what was going on. The guy throwing a fastball did this. Guy throwing an off-speed pitch never took a breath. Shoot, if he's giving me that clear of information that early, I'll take it anytime.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there are guys, and this kind of adds, they're so worried about trying to see fingers and all these different things, they never see anything, and they're just guessing. So it's got to be a system that, creates a lot of confidence, not just guessing.
But what another great drill, even in practice, where you have a station where you try to see who can pick up the ball first and decide what pitch it is. Not only does it work on getting them to see, hopefully, but it keeps their concentration in the game or in the practice. It makes it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, even as an infielder, during BP, you can get good at guessing what direction the ball's going to go before he makes contact, because you'll see where he's trying to make contact and what the bat's doing, the angles.
Absolutely. I love it. Love it. Love it. Hey, we got about 5 more minutes left. If you got any questions, please type them up. Ryan, and I asked this, I just want to make sure we got it, got it done here as far as the things we might be doing wrong. Is there anything else? Because I'm always looking at things that I've been doing for a long time. And look, if it's not the right thing, I'm going to make the change. Is there anything else out there that you see coaches doing that you feel is detrimental to a player's development? And don't worry.
We don't have enough time.
Hey, there's a podcast, man. We could say anything we want on a podcast.
Yeah. No, I think, Peter, that's a broad question because it depends on the levels that you're coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously at the little league levels, you'll see a lot of worse stuff compared to what you see at the collegiate.
Well, for parents, advice for parents that are coaching. Give it.
I think, some advice here, first of all, is don't talk when they're trying to do some action. Because again, do you want them focused on listening, or do you want them focused on seeing?
Yeah.
And if I'm focused on listening to what someone's telling me, I'm not seeing on there. So, a good example, I give you 100 examples, but some of us, when we had sports to watch, we're so focused on watching sport, and our wives are telling us to do something and we never hear it. Right. But then if I want to listen to them, then I'm missing the action of what I'm trying to see.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can only be in one, state at a time. It's hard to be in both, and because you switch back and forth. Your brain resources are switching back and forth. Some of us are a little bit better than others, but so really, being careful of what you're saying in the action of what they're doing. The other thing, and I'm not saying it's easy because I had kids too, but is, again, leading back to the vision question first. What did you see on that play? What were you looking at? Or did you notice this? Did you see some of those things? Instead of, why'd you swing at that? Well, I swung at it because I knew it'd piss you off.
Yeah, right. I always wondered, I always said, they're swinging at it because they're not seeing it, I would think, right? Or they saw the wrong thing.
You swing at a ball in the dirt. Okay, why did they swing at the ball in the dirt? Well, they didn't accurately identify what they were looking at. Why? Well, maybe they were, focused on what pitch they thought was coming. Or maybe they were so intense on trying to get a hit on their goals, they got away from their task on there. And, I'll add this to you, and you've heard me talk about this before, but I think this is a really good point. And I bring this up a lot, is if a hitter and I'll use this major league hitter as an example. If he plays most of a season and gets a lot of at bats, he's going to get 600 plate appearances. Okay. Now, those 600 plate appearances, the average, he's going to get about 3.8 pitches, which easy numbers is 4 pitches. That's 2,400 pitches that through a season that a hitter is going to get in live situation, not practice, not any scrimmages, but real games, 2,400 pitches. Now, of those 2,400 pitches, they swing at half of them. That means they swing 1,200 times. What percentage of those 1,200 swings do you think are perfect mechanics? And us coaches on here are going to be able to say 0 because we can pick every single one of those apart.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of great hitters will realize, yeah, it's less than 5%. That's really good. So yet we're trying to have this perfect mechanical swing, yet it's very rare that it ever happens. It's got to be good, but it's rare to be perfect. So I look at it differently. Of those 2,400 pitches, how many of those pitches did they see really well? And most of them don't know what really well means yet until you start pointing it out. And usually it's the take sign. Usually it's a ball they crush. They say they see really, really good. They see it like the moon. But I don't expect hitters to have all 2,400 pitches to see it that well. I think it's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But when hitters have a good visual plan, when they have a good visual method, when they have good visual skills, they're going to see a higher percentage better. When they can apply it, and this is where hitters, when you see a great hitter all of a sudden go into a long slump, usually they're focused on body mechanics, their swing, and you've heard it all the time. How's my swing, coach? What's my swing doing? Instead of focusing on how well they're seeing the ball. Now, if they see the ball 10% better, that's 240 pitches. That's 1 pitch per game. That's not asking for a lot. Now, if they saw 1 pitch per plate appearance, that's 600 pitches. Imagine if your hitters saw 1 pitch per plate appearance better, how good they would be. What a chance that would give them. But we're worried about the results and we're worried about the swing instead of worried about the trigger and worried about the target.
You know what? Well said. Love it. One more thing, and then we'll close it off, Ryan. I was looking, and I was thinking the catchers, catchers ought to be pretty good hitters simply because they see all these pitches all the time, but that's not necessarily true. But as a catcher, I've got to have pretty good skills because this ball's coming at high speeds to be able to see the ball, identify it early, no different than a hitter. Am I off on that?
No, I mean, look, it is a little bit different. You're set up a little bit different. There's different demands. You know
facing him.
Yeah, you know what pitch is coming. You could afford to be visually lazy as a catcher.
Yeah.
And you can see things in your peripheral. Is it the right way to go about it? No. The better catchers have better visual skills. We have a lot of catchers we work with, and part of it is because they get banged around and they lose some of their visual skills from the blows that they get off the helmet, and so they know they can see better. So they know a difference of good quality of not. But I think catchers again take their eyes for granted, and we can do phenomenal stuff in our peripheral. We're amazing humans what we can do, but we're not always accurate. We're going to do some amazing stuff, but we're not going to be consistent in that mode. So they got to, better catchers find better visual methods to be consistent. Now, do they need to do it on every pitch? I don't think so. But when there's a runner on base, or there's a situation, or the pressure gets on, yeah, they need to have something to fall back to and not just let it go. Now, I know Coach Percy put up here something about sports officials, and
I was just going to get to that.
Yeah, here's the problem, and this is the catchers too. That's why I want to bring it up at the same time. Look, there's a couple problems with officials. First of all, we're trying to get them to do a lot of things at once. We're trying to get them to multitask at once. That's a challenge. On top of it, they do have someone yelling at them from the sideline, constantly, and chewing their ears off. If I'm focused on them, how am I going to see the pitch that's coming across the plate, right? Or if I'm distracted, I'm not going to see it as well. Now, the other thing is the way our eyes function is it doesn't like to complete tasks. What it sees is as much information as it thinks it knows, it needs to know, and then it goes off to the next thing, okay? Our eyes are also distracted by motion. So when you shake someone's hand, you might look at their hand briefly, but then you look up and look away. If you grab your doorknob, you look at it, you look away. You grab your coffee, you look at it, you look away. Your eyes always want to go on to the next thing. So whether it's a catcher or whether it's a umpire, they see the pitch, let's say halfway. and they go, I'm good, I'm done, I'm on to the next thing because I'm already ready to call a pitch, and their eyes come off and they're not seeing the late break and the quality.
I've done that as an umpire.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
Sometimes even whether it's a slide into second base, oh, I think he's got him, and they think they've completed the task, so their eyes come up and they miss that last second detail. And I know in a lot of umpire teaching, they're trying to tell, relax on the call, don't call too quickly, make sure you see what you see. And there are some things with eye movement. There's things with what detail they're looking at. We have this. I deal with some softball umpires. We talk about some of the close plays at first base. Should you be looking at the ball hitting the glove versus the foot hit the bag? And it's debatable. And I also think that's dependable on the person. If I was trying to teach, I get their eyes on the foot and the bag because they can hear the pop. But when you're playing a low level, you may not hear that pop. So you got to be careful of how you're using vision, hearing. Do I need to be in a peripheral to see a lot more information? Do I need to be fine-tuned to see the detailed information? So there's a lot of eye challenges. And if you think about it from a sport official standpoint, and this is not a knock, but a lot of people who become sport officials because they didn't have the visual abilities to play the sport itself. Okay. So they may not have the visual skills that they need to be phenomenal. Now they may be able to find a crutch or find a way to be visually phenomenal, and they can, but those are skill sets that can also be not about clarity, but skill sets of trained umpires or the catchers to be more visually efficient as well.
Interesting. I was a better umpire than I was a player. Here we go. And I played all my young life. Last thing, and you mentioned a key word, and when it references umpires or players, because I'm assuming that umpires are training visual stuff, to get better. If they're not, they should. I think we all should. And again, it's not like you said, it's not a knock. I respect the umpires. I've done it for a long time. But I think if you're training for something at a high speed, you need to train at high speed. But you mentioned a key word: pressure. You also need to train under pressure because pressure affects your vision. And then let's end with that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, and that's what, even going back to using these balls and the high velocity and noise and touching and this, it's we're always trying to apply the right amount of pressure and then pull some pressure off as well, so that people understand how their eyes function in different situations. I've pissed enough players off at times because I put too much pressure on them and they fail, and they don't like to fail. And to me, it's like, I love to fail because now I'm figuring out, oh man, I'm not as good as I am. What can I do to be better? What are some tricks and tactics that I can make this, when I get into that situation, to be more efficient? And, some of the top athletes in the world, they've figured it out. And I'm not saying because of me or anything like that. Roger Federer, he's got some great visual abilities. I don't know if he's got the skill sets. I've never tested him, but I know he's got a great visual plan of how he attacks his game. And, same thing with certain baseball players. There's guys I've never evaluated their visual skills, but I can see and watch that they have a good visual plan to attack, especially when the pressure of the game gets up on there. And when guys are great, they don't hear anything, they see everything.
Awesome. Great way to end it, Ryan. That is Ryan Harrison. Hey, listen, buddy, I appreciate it. You stay safe, and thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. I always enjoy talking about it. And any questions, I see someone sent a question here, but, you can reach me at Slow the Game Down. We also have NDV Performance, and we're working on education programs as well as virtual training programs for teams across the country that can't get out and see us.
Oh, that reminds me, and I will send it because I send an email after every show to everybody. I'll send the email. I send the website. I also will send, somebody asked me about the article your dad wrote, about the vision, about the parents talking. I've got that article. I'll email that out. But also, before we leave, mention, because don't you also have a online program for players and coaches?
Yeah, so with NDV Performance, that's kind of our new side venture on there, and that's kind of our education programs that we're running through there, as well as our training centers. And so that's one of the goals I have with my dad passing, is really getting a lot of the information out there. And it's not going to be perfect. We're working on things, but trying to get better information out there and courses that people can train. Some of the courses will be really basic, just about eyes and how the brain and the eyes work. And some will be more sports specific as we build those out. And then we're also doing, like I said, because of COVID and different things, we're doing virtual training sessions with teams where we get on once a week with them on a Zoom call, and they have exercise plans that we give them, and they work on it through the week, and then we follow up the next week on there.
Perfect. And they obviously can be doing that even during the season with coaches and with yourself. So love it, Ryan. Thanks, man. You've been best. You're the best. No doubt about it.
Thanks everyone for joining.
All right. Thank you, Ryan Harrison. Slow the Game Down, slowthegamedown.com. Thank you to Brian Crocker, our producer with the Lineup Media Group. Thank you to all our listeners in the U.S. and around the world. Special thanks to all of you. Please spread the show the best you can. I really appreciate it. It's the only thing we ask of our guests is spread the show to people that you know and just to get the show out. We're on YouTube at Peter Caliendo. Again, I'm your host, Baseball Outside the Box, the show that loves to interview baseball's best coaching minds who love to challenge the status quo. I want to wish you all a safe day. Hopefully you're on the field. If you're not, you'll be back on the field soon. God bless you all, and we'll see you on tomorrow's show with 3 excellent college baseball coaches, 1 p.m. Central. Take care, everybody. Hang on, I'm just closing off one other here.
Yeah, if anyone wants to ask while they're on, I'm fine with that too.
I'm trying to figure out why it's still recording. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go.